Welcome to the Exit Strategically series. This helps MSP business owners plan their best exit. I'm Amy Babinchak, co-founder of Sell My MSP and longtime MSP business owner.
And I'm Rayanne Buchianico, just call me Rayanne, it's easier. Also a co-founder of Sell My MSP and a longtime MSP accounting firm owner and co-creator of the Strategic Exit Assessment that you've probably heard us mention a time or two.
And the reason why we're all here. So together we're Sell My MSP. We're the folks that coach you through your sell and help you exit strategically because there is a process to selling your business. We've been doing this for 10 years. We're ready to share some of our secrets with you. Today, we're going to take a deep dive through the pricing and services section of the strategic assessment.
All right. So Amy, we always talk about how important clean financials are to a business sale and the valuation, but how does pricing and service affect a buyer's decision to buy a company? Like how does that even come into play here?
Well, I mean, the buyer is looking for indications that you are similar to them and also that you run a well-organized business. So, so we've got, what do we have, 6, 7 questions, something like that in this section on here, because you need to gather some information to give potential buyers a feeling for how you run your business. And the cool thing actually about this section is this is how you should just be running a great business. Like, you don't even have to be selling your business to do this stuff. This is just what should be happening in your business at any time. So let's go through a little bit of what we've got there.
Jump in just a minute, like one of the main things the buyer is looking for, not just, hey, can I take over this company, but they want to make sure that they're buying something that is repeatable and, that they will be able to understand how your clients receive the service from you so that they can provide that same level of service without reading 25 different MSAs. So, but yeah, they're really looking to make sure that the knowledge that you have and your team has can be transferred to them and their team.
Right. Yep. They need to know everything you know about your clients and the products that you've sold them and the promises that you've made to them, because they're going to be taking those things in as a starting point, and then of course they're going to tweak them and change it as they go, but that's going to be their starting point. So you are letting them know how to get started in managing your clients. So
Go ahead, you can go.
No, I was going to jump into a question. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, so was I. I can't even tell you how many times I talk with MSPs and, I'll ask, well, all right, let's pick a client, and I'll grab a client and I say, okay, what services do you provide for them? And, oh, well, that one's a legacy client and we have a special deal with them. All right, then let's pick another client and I grab it. Oh, well, that one has a special deal too, so, my next question is, how many different versions of your MSA are out there on the street, because of these, one-off pricing or legacy promises, like you were just saying, like what you've promised this client. And at what point, like what steps do you need to even make to try and get them more standardized over time?
Yeah, in my MSP, I had 3, and it wasn't, gold, silver, bronze kind of thing. It was my first client ever, which I never raised the price on. It was 23 years. They paid the same price that we started on day one because it was just a thing that I felt was like a good omen that I still have my first client all those years, and I don't know, it might be a bad thing if they went away. So that was one type of contract that we had. And then the other 2 were really not so much services difference as much as they were timing. based on when we build them, because I didn't want to have a lot of different services out there. One, because it would be too complicated for my staff to figure out, like, oh, am I allowed to do this for that client? Can I, you know,
Right.
do I have to quote them before I do this, or is it included in their contract? I didn't want my techs to have to think about what's in the contract. So there are reasons for standardizing your service. It's going to make it easier on your staff, and it's going to make it easier for a buyer to understand what actually it is you do.
Yeah. So, and there's plenty of tools out there. And I know that you were not a PSA user when you had Harbor, right? Um, but I do an awful lot of PSA consulting, and I find myself setting up work types and roles and all of these other things that I can specifically exclude from contracts because it's not included in this one, but it's included in this other one, to try to standardize and automate the invoicing process as much as possible. So if you did have like your three tiers, and I know that you were also never a fan of the, what did you used to call them, precious metals tiers.
All my
But if you
clients were precious. I'm just saying,
and they still are,
they
right?
still are. If you send me money, you make the precious list.
Um, so, and we have three separate tiers, in our different services as well. But it's just a way to standardize, and it doesn't matter what you call them. The one firm uh, I worked at, they called their tiers, what was it? Chevy, Buick, and Cadillac, or something like that. It was like, so, um, but it
I,
doesn't, like I said, it doesn't matter what you call them, but
yeah.
standardization is really helpful for everybody.
I wonder if they called them that to their clients. Like if they went into a proposal and it was like, would you like to buy the Chevy? Would you like to buy the used Pinto? Would you like to buy the
Yeah.
uh, or are you a midlife crisis kind of person? Right? Oh man. Hey, this sort of flows into pricing as well. So I threw in here, when's the last time that you raised your price? This isn't an official question on the assessment, but it's something to think about here as well. Thinking about it from a buyer's point of view and also from your ongoing business point of view, again, the buyer, if you have just raised your price, then that tells them you're probably pretty close to maxed out on the revenues that could be obtained from your clients. If you haven't raised that price in 1 or 2 years, they might take that as, oh, we can probably slip a 5% increase in there and the clients aren't going to split on us. However, if you have not raised your prices in 5 years or more, I can tell you from experience that your clients are going to complain. It's a weird phenomenon. If you do not raise your prices on a sort of regular basis, then clients get unhappy when you do. They feel like, I don't know, you're static in time or something. But if you raise your prices on a kind of a normal basis in small increments, they don't really complain at all. So raise your
When
prices if you've not done it, but don't raise them so often that you might be discouraging a buyer if you're at that stage.
I agree, I really recommend, um, especially if you're using a PSA and you have your contracts set up in the PSA, if you run those contracts no longer than a year or two, it forces you to look at the profitability of that contract and the client on an annual basis. And then when it's coming up for renewal, and you look at the profitability, then you can say, okay, it's time for us to increase this fee, a couple of percentage points in order to bring this company or this customer in line with your profitability goals. And they will get used to that, especially if it's built into the MSA that you're going to increase the fees on average 5% per year, or whatever your number is.
Yeah, and this lets you level set your clients too, right? Last time we talked about knowing what your rate is per client, because if you have a particular needy client, they're dragging your rate down, and you need to make adjustments for that. So great piece of advice there. Let's talk about invoicing, since we talked about paying people or getting paid. Um, Question is for you to think about, do your invoices go out on schedule? Do your clients know what that schedule is? Do you have a payment due policy? And really importantly, do you actually enforce it? So I just talked with a business owner that's in one of my groups, and I don't know why this never came up before, but I just found out that he's got a lot of outstanding payments because he hasn't been enforcing his payment policy, which makes him a bank. Hey, I can get free work out of you and I'll pay you someday when I feel like it and when I get around to it. You shouldn't be treated that way. You did work, people should pay you for the work that you did. So, it can be a real drain on your company. Enforcing that, not having a big outstanding. Here's what happens when you sell, by the way. When you sell your company, all the money you earned before that date is yours. All the money that gets earned after that date, that closing date, is theirs. If you have a lot of outstanding invoices that have been sitting there for 6 months, 4 months, 3 months, they have not paid you, they've been dragging their feet, what are the odds that they're going to pay you after you sell the company? Really, really slim. It'd be like,
Right.
yeah, I know you're paying this other company now, but you forgot to pay me 6 months ago, so I need you to also send me a check. And they're not, that's an indication in my book that they're not the best quality of people, so they're probably not going to follow up on that payment. Your ability to enforce that payment just nearly evaporated.
I was recently working with an MSP, and they wanted a uh, they asked for some sort of flag if a client is more than 45 days past the due date on their invoice, to send, set a flag in the PSA that this customer is on a credit hold, and we called it a credit hold policy, and that they were not to take on any more work, or order any hardware, sell them anything until they make good on their invoices. So it's probably one of the stricter enforcement policies I've put in place in a long time. Um, but, in turn, like, for my own company, I know that, goodness, when I first started, this was 20 some years ago, and we went into the real estate crash and everything. Um, I went 6 months without getting paid from a lot of people who couldn't afford it, and who ultimately never could afford to make good on those invoices, because for one reason or another. But that didn't stop them from calling me 20 times a week, asking for help with this, that, or the other thing. And um, and so you need those funds, not just because you want to be paid, but to pay your staff, and to have the bandwidth in your resources to help them. If they want to be helped, they need to pay their fair share. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Our policy was 2 invoices. So if you were 2 invoices out, a hold went on. So it was about 60 days. And
okay,
my office person would send out a note in Teams, said no more work. If this client calls, tell them that they have to speak to me first. And so all the calls went to her, and then she collected the money because they did want service. So
of course.
yeah, so it happens. You do have to enforce it. It's uncomfortable. We also put a late payment fee on our invoice, which actually, then allowed my bookkeeper to forgive because she was in a really good mood and understood their predicament and blah blah blah, right? So some people just paid it. Some people would call and complain and whatnot, or she would call them to try to collect and offer them this deal of recovering that. So it's helpful to you. It's helpful to run a good business. And as we keep saying in this, it's never too early to start running a better business.
Right, right, exactly. Like another simple thing you could do is if you do find yourself in a position where you've got to write off those late fees, insist that they keep a payment method on file and get on auto pay so that they don't run into late payment fees ever again. You'll be happy to let this one go. I'll absolutely write this off, but in exchange for that consideration, you will place a payment method on file and keep it there for automatic payments.
Yeah, I want to bring in a comment that one of our viewers just put in because it is so on point. It says, we took over another MSP's clients and deal with this late payers headache from the ones we brought on board. We are having to train them how to actually pay on time. Yeah, that's so there's a real world thing here. Rand and I didn't just make that up. It happens. You
It
do have to
happens
train
more
them.
often than you can imagine.
You do have to train them to pay on time. All right. The next thing we ask about is service delivery. Fully documented description of service delivery practices and your philosophy of how you do that.
So does everybody in your company provide the same service or the same quality, same level of service to all of the customers that you do or would expect out of them? Do they know what defines good quality service in your company? And I think that that's like, you know, I don't know about I don't know about you, Amy, but I know that we're constantly meeting. My team is constantly meeting about, offering how can we improve this? How can we improve this service? How can we improve this process? And it's an it's just a constant uh, you know, evolution of our service. So like if somebody were to tackle that, how would you go about that?
You know, I'm really concerned about whether we are providing the services that we told the client we were going to do,
Mhm.
right? So if it's in the contract or if it's in your sales literature or if it's on your website, it says we do this, then you better be doing that. And so I would encourage everybody to take a look at what services you are doing versus what services you are telling people and make those be the same thing, whether that is getting your staff to perform those services or taking them off of the MSA and the website. There for a while, I think a lot of MSPs has cleaned this up, but for a while there was a lot of we do everything, and nobody does everything. So you do need to have a list. When a buyer comes along, they need to know what it is that you're doing because they're going to need to manage your staff to make sure that they're delivering that service. And as they transition to their way of doing things, they need to know what those client expectations of the service actually were. So,
And to back to the point of training clients, um, let's talk about the scope creep, where clients don't have a very clear understanding of the limit of your services. Where does this contract end, and what is beyond that? Because if if it's got an Ethernet cable plugged into it, or maybe it doesn't, if it's got a wireless connection, that must be IT. And that's the way so many people in the world view, everything that we do. It's, oh, it's got a screen. Yeah, call IT. And that may or may not be included in the services that you're providing, but does your team know how to say, I'm sorry, we don't support that device, or, that's outside of, your level of service based on what we've all agreed to. And that's really hard for techs to do. So there should be a standard, some form of standard wording or policy, or how are you going to train those clients that these things are what we do, these other things are not.
Yeah, these are good reasons for having a service manager so that your techs don't actually have to have those conversations, because those are very difficult conversations to have. Where does the contract begin, and where does the contract end? Where does a project begin? What things are you just flat out not going to do?
Right.
Um, let's talk about product lists, vendor contracts, MSA, um, all the things that I hate, because they go on to go on. We're going to ask you to create some spreadsheets. And before we got started here, Rayanne and I was telling her how much I hate spreadsheets. So my brain doesn't think in spreadsheets. Some people do, some people don't. Mine does not.
My brain only thinks in columns and rows. Like it's all very, you know, it's all very black and white. Like, don't put a dashboard in front of me with pie charts and gauges. Like, that means nothing to me. I want to click on it and I want to see the columns of information.
But please don't write a document in Excel. I'm going to pull my hair out next time I get a document in Excel. Like, some people never leave that application. It drives me insane.
That would be
So,
me.
oh man. So
But
you do have to make some spreadsheets for this process. So you need a product list. You need to know what you're selling, who you buy it from, and who you sell it to, right? You need your vendor contracts. I know I never had my vendor contracts together. You need something, you go there, they make you sign a thing, you sign it, you crumple it up, you throw it away. Here, it's like I signed the thing, give me the stuff, I came here, I've got things to do, right?
this is
So
always the missing document. Always, always, always. Nobody has
always,
it.
nobody has it. Sometimes even the vendor doesn't have it. But if you don't have it, you can ask the vendor for it, and if you can get it, you need it. Because those are commitments that you want to get out of when you sell your business. So in one sense, you're giving the information to the buyer, like, here's the vendors that we use for this. They probably already have their own. On the flips, you as the seller are like, oh, here's the list of things I need to bail out of tomorrow. Right?
Right?
I got
And
to
you've
go
got to
tell them
figure out
I'm not in business. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing
how
that. Right?
how do I cancel this? When is this contract coming up? And I know, I'm sorry about the spreadsheet analogy here, but this is a really simple document to put together. You just open up a spreadsheet, right? And start listing your vendors that you have contracts with, your PSA and your distributor. And what about all of those annual firewall licenses and things that you are managing for your clients? Sure, you can go into your IT glue or wherever it is and run a report, but where is the one place that you can go and see, you know, everything that's going to expire in March of this year? Like, where is that? What about your office lease? When does that come up for renewal? And what are the terms? And some of your vendor relationships have 1 year, 3 year, some are month to month. Like, they're all over the place. And if you just start with a very simple sheet, and then make it all sorts of complex. You can have a tab for the annuals, you can have a tab for the monthlies, and a tab for the whatevers, and organize it. Right? Like, yeah, I'll go
Uh,
all the way down into this rabbit hole all day long, but somewhere, because this is one question every buyer is going to ask. If I were to buy your company, what am I on the hook for? Like,
Yep.
and
Well, there might be
so
a few, there might be some vendor things that they want to keep. So when I sold my company, there were a couple of our contracts that they wanted to keep. So we had to work out how to transfer those over to them. Vendors were happy to do that. They were like, "Oh, new customer, let me do this." So that part was pretty easy. Before I had to make the spreadsheet of the information, we kept it in a calendar. Right,
mhm.
here's so that all the renewal things was on the shared calendar. We had our renewal calendar. And we just had to transfer that over into the spreadsheet. Some of your vendor contracts, if you haven't looked at them in a while, you have, oh, yep, one of our listeners just said the advance notice period.
Don't even get me
That's what I was
started.
just going to say. Oh, between 90 days and 30 days of the end of this contract, you have to tell us that you're canceling. Otherwise, it's going to automatically renew. I don't
Right.
even think that should be legal, but
I know, like
um,
like you have a window like this big of
don't miss it.
remembering. And what if you don't see the email, the automated email that gets stuck in your spam filter? And right, so yeah,
Yeah,
don't even get
yep,
me started.
I know it. Yeah, we're gonna go down an angry rabbit hole on that one. Let's move on to client documentation plus redacted client profiles.
Okay. All
Redacted
right. So
client profiles. Let's start there. It's another spreadsheet. Um, you need a list of your clients, and on this spreadsheet, the the list of the not their names, because you don't want to give away your client names just yet, but you can have a column there, and then you can, delete it or hide it or whatever before you send it to somebody. So you got your client, the industry that they're in, the contract that they're under, and a little bit about the revenue and products that you sell to them, right? So you've got sort of this snapshot of what each of the clients looks like. Industry is really important. That's something that buyers are very interested in. What sort of industries do I have to support? Oh, there's a bunch of HIPAA clients here. We've never done that before, right? So they want to know.
a lot of this stuff is really easily done in probably the PSA. If you're using a PSA, spin up a couple of user-defined fields or custom fields and make one the industry, and always make them a drop-down list. You don't want free form, because inevitably somebody will misspell manufacturing and you'll have 5 different groups of manufacturing, right? It'll
The
be
curse of the
MFG.
spreadsheet.
Drop down lists are your friend. Another thing, like if you're not using a PSA, you know what you could also use? Your accounting system. You could create customer types. You can have customer types, you know, uh, all customer locations and industries or whatever, and you can customize those lists. And then you could just simply run the report out of your accounting system, the contact list, strip off the customer name, and it's all set. But to your point, Amy, you not only want their industry, but you also want to know, what level of service they are buying from you, because that's important too.
Yeah. So client documentation was the other piece of this topic. By that, we're looking for the information on their client environment. The documentation's been a sore spot in this industry for so long because it's very difficult to get your techs to keep up on it. But all that information has to get transferred to the new owner, right? Who's their ISP? Who's their SSL certificate renewal place? What do they use for, I don't know, how do they buy their cell phones? Sometimes they come managed if they have a managed contract with them, sometimes they don't. All that kind of stuff, right? All that client information. So if you're not using a documentation system, you should probably start. And there's some great new ones out there that are AI, where it just sort of watches and listens what the tech is doing and writes it for them. I was looking at a couple of those. They're really cool. So in the future, this problem may be solved. The future is almost now. You need good client documentation, the basics.
And I want to say, we started our documentation project in-house. Was what coming up on 4 years now, and at the time it was just this huge animal that we had to tackle. But what we learned was this is such an ongoing project. It doesn't end. We had to turn it into company culture, right? Like this is, you come to work here, you will document everything. I've literally fired people for failing to properly document the work that's being done and how it was being done and what the expectation is from the client. Especially it was a leadership person that I had. I was like, no, you cannot lead this company and violate this policy out. And I mean, I was very unapologetic about that, but I kind of am now. So sorry. But but it's really important that you have a whole company buy-in on the documentation policy and everybody's on board and understands its importance.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I fired anybody for not documenting. I definitely fired people for dragging their feet on tickets, entering their ticket information, which in our case was related to the documentation because we did it all in one place at the same time.
Right.
So, so yeah, it's a big deal. And not documenting your work, to me, that is a fireable offense. Like, how do I know you're working
Right.
if you don't tell me? And if all this information about the client's in your head, then that's a problem too.
Yes, somebody goes out on medical leave, they're gone for what, 4 weeks? How are you going to get into this client's fill in the blank, right?
Yep.
And take over. Where is everything? What are the passwords? Like where is this stuff? It's got to be somewhere. And everybody should have access to it, especially you as the owner.
Yeah.
Uh,
All
all
right.
right,
The MSA, do we want to discuss MSAs real quick? That's your
we
master
could.
service agreement. Of course, you have to have those. So I think we did talk about this a couple of webinar sessions ago. We see a lot of MSPs out there that don't have contracts with their clients at all. Probably 50-50. I mean, it's probably really is that much. 50% do and 50% don't.
Hmm.
And, they're doing the handshake agreement. Well, I've known this guy for 20 years, we've been doing business together and it's fine. And the thing is though, you need some sort of contract because it's really going to affect the sale price of your company if you don't have contracts.
Can I share a story?
Yeah, I do.
So there was this one MSP I was working with, and they didn't have any contracts with their customers. So here's what happened: the customer calls up the lead tech, the salesperson, or was it the account manager, and says, oh yeah, I had lunch with the owner recently, and so the new agreement is that the price of blah 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 is this dollar amount, which was a solid 1% lower than what they'd been charged. And so the contract gets changed, the invoices go out, and all the while the owner has no idea where this came from. But there's also no document, like nobody had a document to say that this conversation did or did not happen, and these adjustments were made verbally. And so it was, one person said and the other person denied type of arrangement. And anyway, so get yourself covered. Just make sure, like, it's what we do is we send out the quotes, and our MSA is attached. It's made part of the document in which the proposal is on. in the terms and conditions. You can put it anywhere you'd like. It does not have to be a formal presentation. Here is my 6-page document of the contracts, terms and conditions. It's if it's in with the proposal and they sign it, then they're agreeing.
Yep. Oh, talk about firing offenses. If your client is lying to you,
Oh yeah. Out you go.
oh, they would be gone. All right, Rayanne, we have taken up enough time from everybody today. Hang around because we'll answer a couple of the chat questions as soon as we wrap this up. But what do we have for takeaways for people today?
Okay, so a couple of takeaways. First, what topics should be priority for you, right? Make sure that your MSA is consistent and enforceable. Two, get your definitions and pricing governance. Like, you want to make sure that your margins are where they are, and you also want to, have that documented. Client documentation is number 3, and then your vendor renewal schedules 4. Those are your top 4 priorities for this particular session. But we have a couple of, homework challenges for you, right?
Yep, you got to
What
make
do you
some
got?
spreadsheets.
Okay, which ones?
Product list, vendor list, client list. If you're not going to do, this is, I think, where you should start. Get those lists together. Get all of your SOPs in a single place. I just I just worked with an MSP last week, helping them organize their business better, and they have their SOPs in 5 different systems.
Hmm,
5 different
5?
systems. 5. I'm like, dude, I'm going to save your company $100,000 next year. We're going to put all of this stuff into one system. It's like it's 100 grand guaranteed. You're going to save time and money, 100 grand.
If you don't already have this one in place, make sure that your invoicing is done consistently, same day, every month, right? If you do your MSP invoices on the first day of the month, when do you do your T&M? If you have those, and make sure that you stick to that schedule. Automate your reminders and get as many people on auto pay as you can.
All right, in the chat, I put a couple of links for you guys. The first one that was in there is taking the assessment, which is free, and the report that you get back is also free, shows you where you stand and what your next steps are. And then also, we'd like to encourage you to join our work group. So we have a work group that meets monthly that goes over all this stuff in the list and gets you from 0 to 10. Turns your business into a 10 so that when you are ready to sell it, it's going to be ready to go. Perfect. Buyers are going to absolutely love you and you'll get more money
And,
for it.
and in the meantime, you'll actually have a better run business.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So like I said, thank you for joining. We're going to stick around and answer a couple of questions for you, but this is officially the end of the session.